Hey, it's about time we tackle another BricksBuilder one-page homepage design for a possible website designing developer consultant. And this is all built with BricksBuilder, and it's going to be really simple and easy to do, and I hope you stick around. Let's start on a brand new page. This is called cons_home for consultant homepage. We're going to be doing it with a web designer in mind. So let's go and kick off with a section and a container. I'm going to go to my section and I'm going to give it a class name. I'd call it cons section 1140. Now you would probably be using much better terminology than this. Because this is a tutorial website, I have lots of classes on here. Once I've created that and saved it, it's gone yellow. So if I was to go over to my layout now and I go to my padding and I go and add in 20 like this is going to add in 20 padding on the left and right, regardless of if you're on the desktop, the tablet, or the mobile. The reason I do that is because I like to have a bit of buffer space. But if I go here and I now want to apply 50 padding to this section, but not every other section, but I want to maintain the 2020, you would hit the X there, get rid of the yellow, it is still activated, and if I now added in 50, it will only apply it to that section. But if I want it to be across all the sections wherever I activate this, and look, if I click it again, it goes yellow, I will go and put it in while it's yellow. So I'm going to go over here to my maximum width, and I'm going to set that to be a 1140. So let's go over to the style tab for the container, go to background, select a background image. Obviously we can't see it at all, so let's go to the layout and make it be a bit bigger, something like that, 600. Back over to the background image, I'm going to make sure that there is no repeat and it is definitely on a cover. And in terms of the positioning, I'm going to go with the center right just to nudge it up a little bit. Now, while we're here, let's adjust how this is actually going to look on a mobile, because this is quite important. Change your height or your width, at the top there to be 378. Now, you could go here, reuse the same image and adjust the positioning. But the best thing to do is actually load through another copy of that image that is more of a portrait style. So we're going to go over to select image, and I've got another copy over here. I'm now going to edit the image, hit scale. I'm going to change the scale of it to be no more than, say, 600 in height. I think that's more than enough. We're going to hit scale. Once that's done, I'm then just going to hit update, and then I'm going to go back into edit again. My tip is that if you scale before you crop, because we are going to crop this, update it and then go back in, because sometimes when you jump to the crop, it removes the scaling. So now we're still 900 by 600. We're going to hit crop. I'm going to drag this inwards. I'm going to change my selection to be 500. And what I'm now going to do is modify this to be something like, and then I'm going to hit apply crop and save edits. Make sure you refresh the page after you've done that, because now when you're on the mobile view and you go to select your image, you should see the more portrait version rather than the landscape one. I'm going to go and insert that, and that is now looking a whole lot better than what we had before. Back on the desktop, let's add in some content. We're going to hit the plus sign, make sure we clicked on the container, and we're going to drop in a heading, another heading, and we'll add in a button as well. We go to the content tab, and we position it down to be in the center. Now at the moment, the text is very much squashed up against the edges there, so we're going to have to bring things in a bit. So let's go over to our container, go to style, and I'm going to go with a 40 from the left like that. I could set this as a standard for the container by adding in a global class system. I might do that later, but right now we're just focusing on the hero banner. I've changed the words. Now let's adjust the style. So we're going to go to the very first heading, go to the style tab, go to typography, and I'm now going to pick my color. Now, I've already used a pre-existing color palette, but I have added in 4 new colors. Canva is great for picking up the colors from an image, and it kind of gives you the hex codes. So I'm going to go and set this one as a white for now. In terms of the font size, I'm going to use REM, but I'm going to use a clamp calculation formula. It's a good idea to know what values you're going to play with. Now, Bricks does use a root HTML of 10 pixel. So if you put 2 REM, that's going to be 20 pixel. 1.6 REM is going to be 16 pixel. I'm going to try out 5 REM, which looks pretty good. And then I'm going to go over to the mobile and put this onto 378 and just see what we should do there. I mean, obviously, 5 REM is too big for the mobile. And also we've got a 40 pixel padding kicking in there as well, on top of the fact we have a 20 padding on the left and right because of the section. So I'm going to drop this down to be 3.5 REM works better. So now that I know my values, I'm going to delete it away from the mobile, go to the desktop and get rid of it there as well. Go to the link in the video description to go to our clamp calculation generating tool. Make sure the root HTML says 10, obviously, because we are using bricks. Go and set your minimum and maximum threshold. So I'm going to go with 380 and I'm going to change my maximum to be 1100. I'm going to change my units to be REM. And then I'm going to enter in my value. So I'm going to go with a 3.5 and we're going to go with a 5 over there. And you can see the formula has now changed. Now what this is saying is between 380 and 1100, the size cannot get smaller than 3.5 REM and it cannot get bigger than 5 REM. So even if your screen size was 2000 pixel, it stays at 5 REM because I'm controlling how this is going to look. So let's copy the formula. Go back over to your desktop. Everything must be done in the desktop, right? Don't do it in the tablet or the mobile. Go and paste in that formula. Get rid of the curly bracket and the semicolon at the end and go right to the beginning and get rid of everything before the word clamp. And when I do that, we now have 5 REM. You go over here, it will now be 3.5. And when you start to go to other sizes, it starts to scale up. Basically, it will just shrink and grow. So much better than the jumpstart font. You know, you go duh, duh, duh. You know, that I hate that. The 700 actually works well, so we'll leave that. The railway is our custom loaded font, so we don't need to adjust that. But what you might want to think about, though, is your line height. Now, when we get over to the mobile, I am going to have that wrap. So because of that, and I know my sizes are 3.5 and 5, I now have to think about what am I going to do for the line height? Well, here's what I recommend you do. Go back over to your tool and increase all of these by 0.3. So we're going to go from 3.5 to 3.8, 5.3. Not that it matters because it's not going to wrap on the desktop, but let's just pop it in. Now copy the formula, go back over to the desktop, go to where you have line height, and let's now paste that in, get rid of the semicolon and the curly bracket at the end, and everything before the word clamp. So if now that wraps, it's going to wrap in line with the font typography, styling, scaling as it goes up and down. Otherwise, you're going to get this really big gap. And believe me, if you don't adjust that, you're going to regret it later on. Let's now go to the second heading. Go to your calculator, set that to be 2 and a 3, paste it in, get rid of the semicolon and the curly bracket at the end, get rid of the word clamp. And I'm now just going to go with 2.3 and 3.3 over there and paste it into the line height, get rid of the semicolon and the curly bracket at the end and everything before the word clamp. All right, you get the idea. Now, if I just show you how this looks when we go to the mobile, can you see the line height? Now, when I was getting the values, there was a big gap. I didn't say it, but you should have noticed it. Go and rewind the video if you don't believe me. Look at that. The spacing is so much better, right? And I'm going to set the button to be a 1.8 REM, and I don't care about the mobile. I want it to stay as a 1.8. I don't need it to grow or scale to like a 1.2 or anything like that. 1.8 is absolutely fine. Now, at the moment, the text over here is crossing over and it looks rubbish in the mobile. Everything is very cramped up, right? So let's go and add in a bit of spacing. Let's go to our container, go to our content tab, and we could, if we want, just go and add in a row gap here. I mean, I could go and pop in 20 like that. Or you might decide you want to have your button closer to the subheading and have your heading very far apart. I've got 40 padding already on that container. Let's move the text over. Now, I know the 50% mark is roughly here. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to type in 55%. You don't have to use just pixel if you've used pixel somewhere else in the padding or the margin. If you want to mix it with a bit of VW, REM, EM percentage, you can do so. So I've done that just to push everything over. Obviously, though, the text is still not very clear because it's fighting for attention with the background image. So staying on the container, I'm now going to go to my background, the gradient overlay, not the background. And I'm now going to apply a background color as an overlay. If you do not change this to overlay, you're just going to get a color and you can't even see the image. So make sure you pick overlay. I'm then going to go and set my angle over here to, at the moment, just be 90. I might adjust that in a moment. I'm then going to put in 2 colors. One is transparent and one is a bit of a brown color. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to pick this brown color here. It's more like a browny red mauvey color, actually. Sorry, not less brown. And I'm just going to say set this to be 50. And I'm going to drop in another color, but this color is going to be completely transparent, completely drop it down like that. And again, I'm going to say 50. So you can clearly see what I'm doing now. I've got one color and I got a transparent color, but they completely hit one another at the moment. What I'm going to do is leave the second color at 50, but my first color, I'm going to drop down. So if I was to go and put 0 in, can you see what it's done? It starts right at the start and it bleeds inwards and then it fades out. If I was to change that to be 20, it looks okay, but can you see now we get a bit of a hard line there? So what you got to do is you got to play around with it until you get to what you think is the sweet spot. And that works perfectly well now. And you can see there on the 378, because the container is bringing over the 40 and the 55%, it's already started wrapping items, but it's wrapping maybe the text more than I really need it to be. And I don't like how far it is away from the edge either, because we've already got 20. Do we need another 40? So I'm now going to adjust this for the mobile to be 20 over there. And in terms of the padding, well, we know the 50 mark is just there. So I'm actually going to go with about 45% like that. And I've made the mauvey, burgundy, browny, reddy-ish color be about 5% just so it bleeds in a little bit better. So there we go. We have our mobile gradient overlay button. And here we've got our image, which is a different sized image. And we've got our font clamp as well. Calculation generation. I'm making no sense at this point. Everything is in for our hero banner. Just wanted to really quickly get that set up. We don't have a header at the top. The idea is we're going to have our header come below. And when you scroll up, it will then become a sticky header at the top. Now, what I am going to do to my section is add in a bit of padding before we start the second one. So I'm going to go over here to where it says cons section 1140. And I'm now going to pop in a 30 and a 30 like that, because I want to have a particular gap at the top and bottom. Just going to double check what that will look on the mobile. That is actually looking okay. So if we now go back over to the desktop, I'm now going to drop in a new section, click over here. I'm going to pick cons section 1140. And what it will now do is it goes and adds in the padding and everything that we needed to have there. Into this container, I'm going to drop in a logo and an imaginary menu system, okay? So we're going to go over here and I'm going to pick icon and it goes into the container. And I'm also going to pick nav menu as well, which will appear here. Now let's just adjust them for starters. Click on the container. Go to content, let's set them to be a row, and then I'm going to say space between. So the icon is on the left and the menu is on the right. Pretty simple. Let's now go over to our icon. I'm going to hit the star, and rather than using one of the icons you get here, I'm going to click SVG. Now SVG will not appear there unless you enable it and you've obviously loaded it into your media library as well. Basically an SVG icon. We're going to click here and I'm going to pick this icon that I've loaded through. It looks horrendously big. Now, you may go here and go, well, I'm now going to make that smaller. I'm going to make it be 300 pixel, but it might not work for you. And it might not look, even if I do 30, it's not really adjusting it. What you do is you click on the icon, 50 pixel like that. Now, in hindsight, I should have gone for a style of font that was a little bit thicker. So please excuse that. All right, that's my fault for how I created it, but I don't want to have it too big. But when you click on the icon and you start adjusting the width and height here, it will work for you. Also, if you want to change the color of this, if I go and pick, say, this red color over here, the fill as well, you can see now it's completely modified the color, but we're going to leave it as the black color or the dark browny black color that we've got at the moment. Let's now click on our nav menu and I'm just going to pick cafe menu for now, which makes absolutely no sense for what we're doing here because it's got about menu booker table. We then go on to container. I'm going to hit align center axis. So now you can see everything there is in line. Now, what I am going to do, though, for this section is be very particular about the height of it. So at the moment, if we go back over to the style for this, remember, this is all in yellow. We have 30 padding at the top and bottom, and then we have our container. So the idea is that when this sticks to the top, do you still want to have that amount of space there? So we are going to get rid of the global class with the yellow at the top. Now I'm going to adjust this to be a 5 and 5, and that's looking a little bit better. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this in terms of the nav menu and the styling because it very much depends on your setup. You got sub menus and what you're going to do. What you should do is go through each of these options and decide on how it's going to look. So for the mobile menu, you're going to have like the bars. You click it. Will the menu come in on the left or the right or nothing at all? How is the typography going to look? So very simply, just for what we have here, for what we can see on the desktop, I'm going to go and set my typography to be 2 REM, set my weight to be a 500, and that's all I'm going to do for this. In fact, I'm just going to rename this for a moment and call it header section. And over here, we're going to call this one, we'll just call it hero banner. And I'm going to hit save because I'm now going to change the background of this. But I am also going to ensure I've got a background color assigned over here to this header. So I'm going to go to my settings. I'm going to go to my page setting. Go to general and I'm going to set a background color like that. Now it's just off white. So this is white and this is the gray. It's a very just off white color there. Okay. But it works for what I'm going to do. Now I'm going to go over to my header section and I'm going to ensure the color for the background of all of this is that same color. Then I'm going to go to my layout, scroll down until I get to positioning, and I'm going to pick sticky. And then I'm going to set the value to be 0. Let me explain. If I had done sticky and put top as, say, 100, it will stick but 100 pixels away from the top. So it might have stuck up here, but then you'll have a gap a bit above it in case you want things to pass by behind. I want this to eventually, when you scroll down, to stick to the top. And to play safe, I've set the Z index to be 99. Otherwise, if you start adding new sections containers, well, each new one is going to have a higher Z index based on the logical way it's been built. So by putting in 99, it's kind of a bit of a fail-safe. Now, at the moment, nothing's going to happen because we've not added in any other further items below. But let's just check how this looks on the mobile. It's kind of looking okay, you know, and I'm not going to mess around with it a lot because I just want to kind of build this out for you. But yeah, that works for us. Let's now go back to the desktop. Let's now add in some further contents. Let's go in and drop in another new section container. Go to our section. Go and pick our class, which is cons as section 1140. So we got our 30, 30, 30, 20, 20, and 1140 all built in there. I'm going to pick up this text over here, duplicate it, and I'm going to move it down to be into our new container. Why not? Just reuse items you've already got before. When I go to the typography, it's already got the clamp formula in there. So let's just pick a different color, align it in the center by clicking on your container. This is something you will get used to. If you go over here to your heading and you start going, well, I'm now going to go to my typography and I'm going to hit center and it doesn't really go in the center, you might need to go and do it on the parent block above, which in this case is the container. So we've got elevate your business with Jack Darley's proven web strategies. That's actually a bit big. Let me shorten that. Obviously, I'm not focusing on SEO here, but you would make sure that you've smuggled in your keywords. Make sure you got a header 1, a header 2 over there before you start to mess around with 4s or 5s or 6s. This, in this scenario, would be a header 1 because this is a completely new section. And then obviously make sure you do it in a bit of a hierarchical way. Now, I'm going to drop in some rich text as well. That will sit below. And with regards to the text, this is one of those scenarios where you could use a clamp calculation again. You might say 1.8 on the desktop going to 1.6. I actually do find that 1.8, 1.7, 1.6 are totally fine. A lot of it actually depends on the type of font you have. So over here, because I'm using Railway, 1.6 is actually quite small. You go for a 1.8 and it's much more readable. And when you get to the mobile, again, that is readable. So you want to play around with it, get a feel for what you're doing. I've called it the elevator section because this is where I'm trying to convince you, hey, this is the great guy you want to work with. I'm going to go to the container and set the gap to be 20. And in terms of the layout, I'm going to set the maximum width to be 75% like that. So you get some text at the top and then we get a little bit of an intro. Now let's just go and check how this looks on the mobile. So what you should see at the moment is our hero banner. We've got that there, and then we've got this. So on the mobile, I don't want it to be 75%, so I'm going to set this to just be 100% like that. Let's now go and add in another new section. There is a lot of sections going on here, but it all fits in and kind of makes it easy for you to work with. You could do a lot of what I've done here and what I'm going to do next in one section, even one container, right? But the reason I'm splitting it up is so that if you change your mind or you decide you want to add components or whatever, it's easier to work with. Sometimes doing too much in one makes a bit of a headache when you get to the mobile. Right, let's go and add in our cons or section 1140. We got our 30, 30, 20, 1140 kicking in. Now into this container, I'm going to be dropping in 3 blocks. Let's go and drop in the first block over here. Icon, and we'll have a bit of rich text as well. In fact, not rich text, we'll have a heading which will fit above the rich text. Section, container, block, icon, heading, text. Let's rename this section to be services. Our icon, well, let's just go and change it. Pick that one over there. It's huge, obviously, so we just got to now resize it. I've gone with a 150 by 150. So let's now adjust this. Sometimes it's easier to visualize this if you actually set things out, and then you can delete them all and just duplicate what I like to call your primary block, because you're going to set a style and then you're going to duplicate it. But to have a good idea of your layout, I'm going to have 3 of these side by side. If I start to style this while I just have one, I'm going to find I'm creating more work for myself later on. So what I'm going to do is go over to my block and I'm going to duplicate and duplicate again. Then I'm going to go to my container and I'm going to say set this as a row. So can you now see we can start to visualize a whole lot better? Let's go to our very first block. So we're working with just one at the moment. Let's go and centralize everything like that for starters, because that's how it's going to be positioned. Is the icon too big or small? We could adjust this, but we'll leave it at that size for now. Let's go to our heading. Rather than you setting an individual style here on the fly, it's not a bad idea to go and create a custom class. So we're going to go over here, cons_services icon box. Again, remember, because I use this for tutorials, I'm just using the terminology that works here. So I'm now going to hit save over there. I'm going to go with a 2 REM. And I'm going to set the weight to be a 600. Now I'm going to go to my rich text. And again, I'm going to set a class name. So we're going to go cons services text. I've now realized that when I did this, I shouldn't have called this icon box. It should have been services icon box or whatever, header or something. So please excuse that. But cons services text, I'm now going to set the color of that and the font size. And I'm going to go with a 1.8 REM, similar to what we had done above. Let's just go over to our block. Let's add in a bit of padding. I'm going to go with a 40 on the left, right, and the bottom. We're going to go to our content and we're going to have a bit of a row gap. Now, before we go and duplicate and change the content, we need to check how this looks in the mobile. So when we scroll down, you can actually now see that sticky header locking into view there. Can you see it? Jack Darley, it now. So you got your hero banner and then boom, it sticks in. So now we're just going to check, is this block looking okay? So we have 40 on the left and right. That's okay. The sizing is fine. Yep, that looks okay. So what we can now do is go back over here, get rid of the other blocks that we had. I don't know why I hit duplicate then. Delete them, and now just duplicate them. So there we go. We've got our 3 services item in here. Now, obviously, you would probably have buttons at the bottom over here, which are going to say now show us, I don't know, contact us, for instance. I mean, discover more. The basis of this is going to kind of take you down to this section here. So I would now want to have a button that says contact us or book your appointment. So what we have over here is we have services and we have container, which contains basically these 3 blocks. So I'm now going to drop in a button that's actually going to sit below them. So what I'm going to do is, rather than start from scratch, I'm going to duplicate this button we've got here, pick it up, just make sure that you don't put the button into the container. So what you might need to do is just lift it out, shrink down the container and just move it so it's actually sat within the services section. This is why having section container can be a good thing, because sometimes you go, why have you got the section? All you're doing is padding and the width of it. You could have just had a container. This is where having the section container hierarchy can work quite well for you. So now we have our button down here, and I'm just going to change the text of this. Let's get you booked. And obviously it's going to take them down to the contact form. Right, now let's add in some further content. We're going to fly through the next bits. Trust me, we're going to go and add in another section container. We're going to duplicate this container so that we have 2 of them side by side. We're going to go to our section. Make sure you take off the yellow. Otherwise, it will apply to every section where that global class is, which is something we don't want. And we're now going to set this as a row. So what you have is your 2 containers side by side. Now into container number 1, I'm just going to go and add in some text, and we're going to have an image over here. So here, I'm just going to pick up this text here, right? And I'm going to go here and I'm going to hit paste. Just reuse items that you've already got, whether it's got clamp or REM or whatever you're doing. So let's just modify that text. We've got a bit of text in there. It's quite lengthy. I've put a carriage return in just to break it up. But what we need to do is add a bit more visual stimulus, because at the moment we haven't got any web design. And this is where you probably would have another image in somewhere. And the image here, I would say, should be a web design or a website you've built. But for the purpose of what we're doing, I'm just going to drop in any old image. Now that image is looking squashed up because we've not defined or stretched it, and we are going to come on to that. Let's just go to our container that currently contains the text. Let's go to our layout, and I'm going to say, give me about 40 like that. Just give me a bit of padding and spacing. Let's now go over to our second container. And what we're going to do is just go and hit the stretch option on the container with the image, right? You do that, and it now stretches out. It's probably not the best image that I think, actually. I'm going to quickly swap that out. And that works a little bit better. I'm also going to go to my container, and on further like 4, I'm actually going to get rid of the padding at the top. It looks better because look, if you had 40 there, it wasn't starting in line. And I feel like by having just a 0 there, it just fits and looks a little bit better in terms of styling. And I've just increased that to be a 60 just to space things out a little bit better. So this is now just telling us a bit about Jack. And obviously you would have a web design. Let's just check how this all looks in the mobile. So at the moment, this is looking kind of fine. in the way that its layout is. So, we got our header sticking at the top there. You scroll down. We've got this here. Now, this section, I'm going to drop this back to be 30 like that. The container does not need to have 40 on the left and right, so we're going to eradicate that over there. Remember, having too much padding can squash your text up all the way to the middle, so space it out. Scroll down, and we've now got our image over here, which is going to look ridiculously shrunken again, unless we go and set the height. So I've just gone with a 300 there. So far, so good. Now what we're going to do is duplicate this and flip everything around. No. Can I go back on myself? So where we have this container at the moment, this is actually going to be a white container. So I need to do a bit of tinkering here. We're going to go over to our background. There's a reason I went for the grey color for the page. This is why. The background for this container is going to be white. I am then going to go to my section that contains everything, go to my content, and I'm going to set my column gap to be 40. So what we now get is this. So there's a bit of spacing going on. I now go to my container, and I am now going to pop that 40 back in because there was a reason I did it. I just couldn't remember. Why was I thinking of that in the first place? So what we get, if I just quickly save this and give you a preview, is because you've got all this stuff going on. So now I break it up with a bit of a flash of white color in there just to break it up. And I find that sometimes just going with one standard color like a gray or something can get a little bit boring. So I'm just adding in a bit of visual stimuli. Right, that is now done. And let's just check how that looks on the mobile. We go to the section, go to the content. We're going to add in a row gap of 40. Go to the container. And you know what? We definitely are going to have to add in a little bit of padding over there like that. Let us now duplicate that section. Rename it to be about Jack. I mean, you could argue, weren't you already telling us about Jack? And I'm like, yeah, this is just a bit more. We now go over here, and where we have the two containers, you can either pick them up and swap them, or just go to the section, go to the content, and reverse it like that. So you could either pop it over one another or just reverse it. Now, the gap we have here is quite big because it was using the 60 from above. So let's go to the style, pop that back to be 30 like that. I've just realized that our containers are not equal. So I'm just going to go back over to Jack. Sorry, that was an oversight by me. Go to my container, go to where we have the max width, and I'm going to set that to be 50%. Go to my width and set that to be 50%, and I'm going to do it on the second container as well. I won't duplicate it because we've already got it there. You will find, though, that when you do that, it doesn't always, it kind of jumps a little bit. But if it does that, don't worry about it. Cool, let's now just swap out the image and the text. What I'm next going to do is now reuse one of my other sections. So I'm going to take the elevators section, I'm going to duplicate that, and I'm going to move it all the way to be at the bottom. I'm going to get rid of the text we got here. I'm going to leave the heading. I'm going to change the content. I'm going to make the typography be a white. I'm going to go to my container and give it a background image, and I am going to add in a bit of overlay onto it. So now we will go back to that image I wasn't going to use originally. In fact, can I just set the height as well? Otherwise, you're not going to be able to see anything. If I just go with a 500 like that, go to my container that contains the text, move the text down, go back to the container. I'm still in the container, sorry. Go over to my gradient overlay, make sure it's set on overlay. I'm going to go pick one color. Right, I'm not going to have a blended effect. I'm just going to pick one color here. And I'm just going to make it be a little bit transparent. And in terms of my heading, I don't want it to go all the way across. So I'm just going to go over to my layout. And I'm just going to set the width to be 50%. So we get a bit of a wrap going on there. In the mobile, I'm just going to adjust the height to go from a 500 to be about 300. That's okay. You may want to adjust both the gaps, okay? I'm not going to tinker with it too much. But, you know, if you feel like you got too much gap, just go over to your relevant section, and where it's currently got a 30 in there, you might go, actually, no, we're going to zero it out, or maybe just pop in a 10, but you will adjust it and you'll have kind of like how you like to work and how you want it to look. We're nearly done. We're going to pick up this section, which is about Jack, duplicate it, move it to be below the elevator section, rename it to now be contact. Let's swap out that image. Get rid of the text that we have inside of here. Go and grab your contact form. And obviously you'll go and tinker with your form, the actions after submit, redirect, where's it going, what's it saying, what fields you want to have. and you would probably add in a footer, which I'm not covering off here for this tutorial. So here we go is a basic portfolio website. Look, your header sticks at the top. Obviously, you might want to use menu anchors to direct you around the page. We've done a previous tutorial on that you can go and watch. But it's really simple and there's nothing fantastical going on here. But I hope it gets you to appreciate how you could build one using BricksBuilder. Hey, I'm Imran, Web Squadron. I hope you like, subscribe, share, and follow. I'll see you soon.
Never break, always fight, never quit, do it right, play the game, win it life, have no shame, there's no time, feel the pain, live the grind, I could change.